All right, everybody, welcome back to the Mindful Hunter podcast. I'm your host, as always, Jay Nichol. Super special guest on the podcast today, and we're actually going to be having a bit of an off-the-track conversation. So Steve Speck is joining us. He is the founder and owner of both S&S Archery and Exo Backpacks, which can be found on Instagram under @huntbackcountry. Thanks a lot for taking the time, man. Deeply appreciate it.
Yeah, no, excited to be here, Jay. Appreciate the invite.
So, as a little context, as everybody knows, I just launched Mindful Reviews. I've been an entrepreneur for years. I've never really launched anything in the outdoor space. And when I launched Mindful Reviews, I started finding myself looking at all these founders in the outdoor space because I was looking at them for inspiration and guidance and just like, oh, how have other people solved problems in this space? And I thought to myself, I want to do a kind of founders series and try and get guys on who, because some companies were started so long ago that the guy, like, it'd be interesting to talk to Patrick from Kafaru, but he doesn't really have a bunch of insights into the market today. And then some of the other companies have gotten so big that that I think they've also kind of lost touch. But there's these sweet spot companies where the owners are still an integral part of the company and they've grown big enough where they're legitimate businesses, but they're still small enough that they're in touch with the more kind of niche backpacking community. And so you kind of rose right to the top of the pile. So I'd like to start off a little bit about some of your background from hunting. Did you originally grow up in a hunting family? And where are you from? Idaho originally, or did you move there later on in life?
I was born in California, but we moved here when I was 8 months old, something like that. My dad was a football coach and came up here to coach at Boise State.
Okay.
And so we moved here when I was little, and definitely under one, and then been here ever since. So 38 years old now. Yeah.
And did
And
you, were you in a hunting family?
very much outdoors, bird hunting, fishing, and then big game hunting. My dad grew up in California, blacktail hunting.
Right.
So when we came here, we would go like whitetail hunting. Definitely like from time I was probably 10 to 18, we would do like one weekend a year. Like if we drew an elk tag, we'd go somewhere where we'd hunt elk, and we'd have like one guy have an elk tag, everyone else have deer tags. And that was kind of led me to my we were never successful, I have two brothers and my dad, and we'd maybe kill a deer or something like that. It just wasn't like very successful. And my mind is wired to like, all right, this isn't working. How can I fix it? Right. And so when I was 18, it just happened to be like, I was really into the hunting side of it and digging it. And I wanted to become better at it. And then I met a good friend of mine, still one of my best friends today. He was a bow hunter, and went over to his house after school one day and shot his bow. And then that was just clicked. Like the next day I went and, grabbed what little savings I had, bought a bow, started shooting. And from 18 to 36 was just full on addicted to archery, and just dove into that head first. So and then that coincided with, I just have a natural passion for backpacking and adventure and just getting out there in the mountains. So to pair that bow hunting with backpacking was just like, that's where I want to be, right? Out there in the mountains with a bow in hand.
Now, there wouldn't have been the community around backpack hunting that there is nowadays. What was it like,
No.
20 years ago? You're probably using a lot of mountaineering stuff and like, stuff from adjacent industries in order to like get it done. Was it just you and a couple buddies? Did you end up finding a bit of a larger community, or what was that like? Because I'm imagining the barrier to entry being really high.
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of information out there, not a lot, on the hunting side of it. It was more just trial and error. It does feel crazy when you say that's 20 years ago, because it's pretty true. I feel old. I'd been on backpacking trips, but never paired that with a hunt. So I remember my first trip in, I picked a spot on Google Earth. I had a Cabela's pack frame, and then there was I think it was Blacks Creek was the name of the backpack company. I think they're still around. But it was like a day pack, and slapped that onto the frame and hiked in there, and it was way further than I anticipated. And I remember sleeping in my tent the first night, just scared shitless, back there in the middle of nowhere. It's the first time I've ever been solo in the backcountry. And I had this awesome elk hunt the next morning, but there was no way I was spending another night out there alone, and hiked out of there. And I was probably 19 years old, 20 years old, something like that. So, but I remember hiking out, like I'd packed a pistol in and I was sitting in my tent that night. Like I didn't sleep a wink. Like every noise was some bear coming to eat
I
me.
love it. I love it.
And but I was like, as much as I hated that solo night alone, I mean, I think it was 6, 7, 8 miles back. There was a ways. It was way too far for my first backpack trip. You know, I had
Yeah.
no idea what I was doing. And halfway out, I was like already planning my next trip. Like, what am I gonna do when I go back? You know,
Yeah.
and it did like the two didn't even, like reconcile in my brain. Like, wait a minute, I just hated this night alone, but there was something so thrilling about it and just
Yeah.
connecting with nature in that way that I was all about like planning my next one. And it's just been, yeah, ever since then, it's just keep pushing the envelope. What's like, you know, what's the next thing I can experience? How far can I push my body? Yeah, just always over that whole syndrome of what's over the next ridge. You know, I suffer terribly from that. So,
I had to remind myself that the other day because I get questions on the podcast like, how do you sleep at night and stuff? And it's been so long now that like I literally don't even think about it. When I thought about it, I'm like, no, wait a minute. Like there was some like real legitimate fear. Like
mhm.
those first couple of solo trips, like I can remember like laying there awake at night. You like whatever little furry creatures running past, you think it's 10 times bigger than it really is. And I almost
Yeah.
want to tell people like it just fades away. Like you after so many nights out there and nothing happening again and again and again, you just like I don't even think
Yeah.
about it. I pass out as soon as my head hits the pillow these days.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's all for me. I remember I switched to like a bivy sack and a tarp, and that was okay for a while, like with a group setting, but not solo. I didn't really like it because you didn't have the safety of being in a tent,
Yep,
you know.
yep,
And then now I'm to the point where I could be completely in the middle of nowhere, throw my bivy sack out on the ground on a clear night, and just pass right out. Yeah,
yeah, 100%.
yeah.
So old man is a football coach. So this was interesting because I
Mm.
mean you are a particularly driven and motivated individual. Was that something you think was influenced by your father, or is that a bit of a standout in the family?
Um, Certainly sports was a huge part of growing up. I mean,
Okay.
we're all football, basketball, but baseball players all the way through high school. Both my brothers played collegiate football. I was the only one who didn't do anything in college. Um, I got too into hunting and was just like, literally, that was became my thing once I graduated high school. So yeah, certainly sports and that, and my dad was very much preached like leadership, leading by example. So that was just who we are, yeah, or how
Okay.
I was raised, yeah.
And what was your
Business
early
wise,
work life like? Like what were some of your first jobs?
I mean, early high school, well, probably middle school was just like washing dishes at a restaurant, and I worked at a car wash and just random crap like that. And then I got a real world life experience on building a business. But my oldest brother and my dad had started a metal building business when I was sophomore in high school, something like that.
Okay.
So they were designing, manufacturing, and installing metal buildings here in the Boise area. And so from my sophomore year all the way through gosh, through most of college, that's what I did. I was after school, you know, school get out 3 o'clock, go work for a few hours, go home, you know, when it wasn't football season, stuff like that. Um, and I just grew up in that business. It just worked literally from doing, you know, being grunt labor out in the field to all the way at the end. I was in the office doing sales and design and engineering of the buildings. And then in '08, when the construction market just crashed here in Boise, the business went under pretty quick. So, but my dad and brother had made mistakes running the business and had debt, and you know, it came to a crashing halt fast. Like it was
Right.
a multi-million-dollar business that went bankrupt in the matter of like 6 months. Right? It was just like
Wow.
holy crap. Um, and that's kind of actually what led to the founding of S&S Archery. During the last few years of the business, I was getting really into the archery side of it, and I started working on my own bows, and then and the interest of getting deals on stuff. I had set up my own business. I had another job. I created a business. We had all these side projects on the construction company that people calling like, "Hey, I need a window installed here or there." And my dad and brother didn't want to deal with it, right? They, you
Right.
know, but I was like, I asked them like, "Hey, do you guys mind if I start up a little business?" And I had a couple guys that worked for me, and I'd go meet them out at the job at 6 a.m. and line them out, and then get to the office by 8 a.m. And so I was doing that, and I already had this business called SS Builders. And then the state of Idaho is super easy. Just file a doing business as little piece of paper, costs $20 or something like that, as S&S Archery. And then started approaching all these archery, like I think Elite Archery was the first dealership I had. and reached out to them and like, oh, what's it take to become a dealer? And like, oh, you got to buy 5 bows. They're a super small company back then.
Right.
So like, shit, yeah, I'll buy 5 bows. I lined up 4 buddies to buy them directly from me at a great deal. And then I just started doing that with a bunch of different companies. Like Victory Archery was an early one I remember. And I started selling stuff on Archery Talk, a forum it's
Yep.
around now, but it was way cooler back then. It was smaller and not so much just crap going on with forums, what they've
Yeah.
become these days. Um, that's how I started. And then I was selling this company called Zen Ray Optics, and they've since gone out of business. But they were kind of like an earlier version of Athens and Athlon, and not Athens, Athlon. Some of these they're making Chinese glass that's like
Yep.
pretty good for the price, right? It's got issues, but it's like pretty good for the price. And
Yep.
that guy was like, "You're selling a lot of these. Why don't you build a website?" And I was like, "I have no idea how to build a website. I don't know what you're talking about." And then I just found some website template. It was called Volusion. It was a early version of Shopify, right?
Yep.
Like a full plug and play template, and started built a website. And that all happened right at the same time as the Speck Buildings, our company, was going bankrupt. And so it was a pretty natural, like, oh crap, I just lost my job, but I got this little side gig going, and I better make this work.
Yeah.
So in the early days, it was just about like, all right, can I make $30,000 to pay the bills this year? And then it just kept, I just hustled my butt off and just worked and worked and worked and worked and worked. And that's been a while now. Yeah, pushing.
Was it a pretty natural progression to adding more products? Because I'm going to assume the first stuff's like all archery related stuff you can sell pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have a really extensive catalog, and I don't know how dealer relationships work, but there's a fair amount of significant investment in inventory, and you got
Mm-hmm.
all the sights and all the scopes and all the glass and all the other stuff. Did you just find that like people were coming for one thing and they also wanted this other thing, so maybe we'll just start carrying more and more stuff? Was that a pretty organic, or was it more strategic, like a thought out plan?
No, I was very strategic. Very strategic on it had to be, and we still subscribe to this. If it's not stuff that we don't use, I mean, if you compare S&S Archery to other guys who do probably the volume that we do, we probably have, I don't know, significantly less amount of products, 20, 30%, or
Yep.
80% less. We probably have 20%, we have 20 products, they have 100. And so we've always focused on, like, if it's something we don't use and stand by, then we're not going to sell it, right? And so we do very, very well with the stuff that we sell, but we don't have a super broad catalog on the website compared to others, for sure.
I would argue this is a philosophy that transitions over both of your businesses. Is this something that you recognized early on, like this go narrow and deep as opposed to broad and wide in business?
Yes, 100%. Yeah, I think a lot of it just have like, you have to be you have to have integrity. The customer has to believe what you're saying, right? And so that you just can't be super wide and say, oh, this is great and this is great and this is great and this is great. Well, not every product's great. There's a bunch of crap out there. So just staying focused and narrow, to me, was always made a lot more sense. Our number one focus is take care of the customer, right? And by selling really good products, by designing really good products, and then taking care of the customer, it's just a great recipe for success. It promotes very natural, sustainable, organic growth over time versus just coming out of nowhere, buy a bunch of inventory, run Facebook ads everywhere, and you can get big fast, but you can also lose the ground from underneath you pretty fast.
Have you run into any significant challenges with S&S since launching?
No, not really. It's been pretty smooth.
Okay.
COVID was a significant challenge. The most significant challenge was transitioning from me running it to I have a guy, Rob, right now, who runs basically for it. And
He did the
S&S is
spotting
small.
scope review with you, right?
Yeah. So that was once 2014. I founded Exo with a friend, Lenny Nelson. We started it together, and I since bought him out quite a few years ago. But it was basically like I was doing sales and shipping and everything for both companies. And it was just kind of like, holy crap, I can't keep doing this. I need to hire somebody. And Exo was just kind of taking off like a weed. And it's like, okay, I need to find someone to come in and run the S&S side. So that was the most significant challenge I had, was finding that person I could trust to run it. and B, just getting them trained up, and it just took time, just have patience. But Rob is a super intelligent guy and picked up on it, and does a fantastic job. I said, and it's small. It's only 2 employees, Rob and Justin Nelson, that he does all our shipping and then video content and stuff like that. So
Okay.
we do, but we do a lot of volume for 2 employees. We'll put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a very common problem, especially with entrepreneurs. I mean, one of the things people run into all the time is that they started a business because that business was what they were in love with and wanted to spend their time doing. But then
Mm-hmm.
what I would commonly call like the business of the business is a completely different skill set. And it's rare to find people that are equally talented at the thing that founded the business, but then also the kind of extracurricular infrastructure that's required to kind of foster and scale that business to
Yeah.
any size.
Yeah. It's been, I get some of that stuff comes natural for me. I feel like I have, I'm sure you're in your side of it, you're used to coaching people on like find your strengths and your weaknesses. And
Yep.
one of my strengths is just, I almost call it uncommon common sense, right? Like
Right.
just so I can see things pretty clearly that to other people are like, what are you talking about? And it's like, no, this works. This, you stick with this method, this works or whatever. And that's one of my strengths. And my weaknesses are, staring at spreadsheets and numbers and stuff like that. So some of the first things I could outsource was getting a bookkeeper in here and, having a CPA on hand and things like that, take care of that side of the business for me. Cause I just despise doing that paperwork side of it. So.
Do you do anything intentional for business training? Are you a big book guy? Have you ever taken any courses, or was this just all on the job kind of training for you and obviously being exposed to your
Yeah,
old man
no,
and
yeah,
brother's
all
business
on the
first?
job. I'm
Okay.
not much of a reading books guy, or yeah, I think um, a lot of people get caught up in the weeds there of like reading the latest and greatest book, and they're spending so much time on that they're not actually working on a business, I think. But yeah, for me, it's been um, a lot of it's just natural instinct and going with gut feeling on things, right? Again, like to be with the S&S side to be like really narrow and focused. A lot of people wouldn't advise that, right? But
Nope.
it's worked fantastic for us. And we've very specifically sought out, you kind of going back to your question earlier about adding products to the categories, is finding good companies to work with that
Right.
supported us. And early on, um, when I was super small, a lot of companies were drop shipping for us, Black Gold and Spot Hog and Tight Spot Quivers. Trying to think of some of the earlier ones. Those are the ones that come to mind. The drop ship. So I just take an order, put a PDF together, ship the order off to them. They'd ship it out. I'd get a tracking number. I'd dump the tracking number into the order and hit complete on the order. And the customer's like, "Hey, your order shipped." I never even touched the inventory, right? But a
Yeah.
lot of that was finding the companies that were great to work with, and so much of business is personal relationships, right? And
Yes.
it's God, we've seen that. Like we'll have one of our favorite companies to work with. I'm going to pick them out, but the employee that was there forever, and they just let him go, and I think just cutting costs for some stupid reason. But it's a completely different company because this one person's gone, right? That person
Right.
was absolutely rock solid, took care of everything, fantastic customer service, and you let this one person go, and it's completely changed. It's disappointing when that stuff happens. So I'm pretty anti big companies coming in and buying out smaller companies. I think innovation stops and it becomes way more profit driven, and I just don't think it's good at all. And unfortunately, it's a trend we're seeing everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. This is kind of. Do you have any opinions? And you can say no because I know there's some relationships there about the whole meat eater conglomeration thing going
Hmm.
on with them buying up smaller. And
I'm
like I
not a
say, we
fan
don't
of it
have to
all.
dig into
Yeah.
it, but I find it
No, I don't.
interesting.
I'm not a fan at all. Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't.
Okay.
I don't like it. I don't think it's good for anything. I've yeah, I get to see behind the scenes on stuff, and I don't like it. Yeah, flat
Yeah,
out.
it really tweaked. And I know for anybody who don't understand, the people who actually own Meat Eater are the Churning Group, and the Churning Group owns Barstool Sports. And their whole it's funded by this old VC media guy, Peter Chernin, and the whole philosophy is to find this gigantic content creator influencer and then build a commerce ecosystem around. So that's what they did with Dave Portnoy. Obviously, insanely successful. They found Steve
Hmm.
Rinella. They do the same thing, and they just have bucket loads of cash that they dump in on top of it. And I've been very candid about it on the podcast. I'm withholding some conclusions because so far I'm still happy with my Phelps calls. I don't personally wear
Yeah.
First Light, so I don't have an opinion on that. But like technically speaking and historically speaking, the quality of these companies will go down. Like
Yes.
that's what happens.
It's a matter of time.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's run extremely well and it takes 10 years or 15
Yes.
years or 20 years, or if it happens, sometimes it happens overnight within a year. They come in, they let people go, they start looking where they can save money and cut costs and improve profits, and the product suffers, the customer service suffers. In the long run, it's never good for anything.
Yeah.
The short run, a bunch of people make more money.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
All right.
But I'm not a fan of it. I've know very well Kitten and Scott, the founders of First Light, the good friends of mine. I was super bummed when they sold it because I had that opinion.
I feel like
back
there was a
then.
big shift
Yeah.
too. I used to be a pretty diehard First Light guy, and something about it just felt different to me after that.
Yeah, it's just the product, the quality is fantastic. Their new Omen rain gear is the nicest rain gear you can possibly put on your body. In my experience, I'm very impressed with that. They're doing some great stuff still. It's just the culture changes. It just becomes more of a corporation, and I'm just not. That's just not what I ever want to do with Exo or S&S or anything like that. I'm just not a fan of it as a general rule.
So, okay, let's transition back. So S&S is going well. Where does the inspiration or the idea for like, you know what this market needs is a different backpack? Where does that come from?
Yeah, just from backpacking, right? Like going backpack hunting is just in the early days of S&S, Eberly Stock, they're a local Boise company. The great Glenn Eberly's a fantastic guy. He was kind of a business mentor of mine, and they just didn't have a backpack that was built for backpack hunting. Everything was just more focused around day hunting and creative ways to carry your weapon and stuff like that, which is fantastic. But I was sitting there like this is the type of hunting I'm doing. I need a pack that's light. I need to go in for 5 miles, be light, be comfortable, throw 100 pounds on this and come out heavy. And that, it didn't exist within their product lineup. It didn't exist anywhere else really. I mean, this is, probably 2011, 12, that time frame where I really start thinking about this heavily. Like I had, been very successful with S&S at this point. I had done a couple other companies prior to that. One was called Solid Broadhead. So I designed a broadhead, manufactured it, designed it. And I actually, another lesson early on, Elite Archery, the owner of that at the time, his name was, Pete, and I can't remember his last name at the moment, but he was had a good relationship with him, and he came to me and was like, "Hey, if I offer you some money, would you sell this to me?" And I was like, I think I was 23 or 24, and I was like, "Oh, this sounds great!" Promise the world, you'll make X amount per year, and blah blah blah, and that quickly, like within a year, I was massively regretting that decision. But so a lot of my learnings just on the fly in the field training, right? Just making decisions and going with gut instincts. So that was a wrong choice I made, and I'll certainly never repeat that one again. But so I'd done some other companies, launched that, sold it. I had started there's an archery shoot called the Northwest Mountain Challenge that I started and did for quite a few years. It still exists today. I don't have anything to do with it. I kind of passed it on to the guys running it. I just got too busy with Exo, but that's still been very successful. So I'd launched and done some other companies, and then backpacks was just a very natural going back to, like, I just see problems and I want to fix them, right? Or I see better ways to do things. And that was like, okay, there's got to be a better way to make a backpack. We're trying to, scouting was using like Osprey and Gregory packs, these super light packs that could handle 30, 40 pounds just fine, but you can't throw 100 pounds on them. And then it's like you had that hard transition to just nothing. Was very good at carrying heavy weights.
But you'd have a Barney's pack back then, but again, that thing that says like a tank.
Yeah, and for me, that was like this weird Alaska thing,
Right.
It was a tank. It was not something lightweight that I wanted to pack. And, but I think at that time, the common way to pack meat was you had a light pack that you hunted with, and if you killed something, you had a pack for him.
I can still remember when I signed up for Corey Jacobson's Elk 101, that was the recommendation. Like for elk hunting, you hunt with a day pack, and then you take a first kind of little load out with you back to wherever. And he's a big main camp guy. Again, I think
Yeah.
we're bivy. I'm a bivy guy when I elk hunt. So that strategy, he can't carry 2 backpacks the whole time. But
Right.
and that wasn't even that long ago. Like I want to say
No.
maybe 6
No.
years
Yeah.
ago. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. I was on Corey. Corey's a good friend of mine. I was on his butt. Like, dude, come on. Like, our packs are way more comfortable than that pack frame you're using. But,
yeah.
um, yeah, no. So that was the motivation for it. Just frankly seeing a need for a product and,
Now was a meat shelf a
working on it.
specific? Because I wouldn't say you guys necessarily invented it, but I'm going to want to.
No.
I will say you're one of the major proponents who popularized it. Now was
Mhm.
that like a core kernel of the design? Like, listen, this is the problem, and this is how we're going to solve it, and then we're going to kind of design around that. Or
Well,
how did that come about?
yeah. I mean, the only other way the time was like uh, I was one tripping a lot of stuff out, and the only other option is you need a 8,000 cubic inch bag. So
Yeah.
you're hunting, you only need 3 or 4,000 of that space, but and then you do this massive bag to haul out the rest of it. And then you're putting bloody meat in with all your gear and things like that. It just didn't make sense to me. Like being able to separate the bag from the frame and sandwich it in between. And I see, we certainly didn't invent it. Like, I mean, Everly Stock kind of had a platform where it kind of opened up and you put meat in between. So your meat was separate from your gear. I think Mystery Ranch had a little bit of something similar.
I'm trying
And
to
then,
remember when the Outdoorsman's, because that was the first real hunting backpack I ever bought, was their long range optics, the one that's kind of on the plastic injectable molded
mm-hmm,
frame, and it's
mm-hmm,
built around a meat shelf. And I think it had been out for
yeah,
a couple years as well. There was a
yeah,
couple out there.
we certainly didn't invent it. I think, um, yeah, we didn't invent it, but it's just that it was the method that, like, yeah, this is clearly a superior system.
But I almost
You
feel like one of the
certainly,
differences with yours was it was kind of an add-on with some of those other packs. Like, yes, technically the
right,
pack can do this,
right,
but I wouldn't say that the pack was designed around it. Whereas yours was the first pack or one of the first packs where it was like this pack has been designed to use this way. Like you're still going
yeah.
to have a functional load placement by the time you put this stuff on here.
Yeah, 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 100%. I mean, we absolutely started as 100% backpacking focused. We didn't even make a day pack when we first started, something that we would just day hunt with. It was like, look, we are backpacking. It's what we do. Is how we're building these packs. And we had a 3,500 and a 5,500. We covered the lightweight guys, covered the guys who needed more space. And it was, yeah, I'm going in for a week and I'm going to kill something and I'm going to come out with it.
Yeah.
So the pack, like the load shelf was completely integral into the design. That had to function seamlessly and be easy to use and operate.
Now, what was the design process like? How long did it take you to go from like, okay, we're going to do this to an actual product that you were comfortable selling?
Um, it went pretty quick. I mean, it was frankly over about 10 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it went really quick. We were at that point in my life, my wife, she was my fiance at the time, was in
Okay.
grad school living in Portland, so she was 6 hours away from me. And I was just, 25 years old, 26 years old, like living, just all I did was work and hunt.
I love it,
It
man.
was fantastic.
Yeah.
I actually attribute her living away from me for 3 years
Yeah.
to a lot of I was able to build the foundation that I have now because I worked 80 to 100 hours a week
Right.
for a lot of years. That's all I did was work, and then would hunt, would squeeze in hunts here and there. Um, and so yeah, with that first 10 months, it was just balls to the wall. Like we had got introduced to a sew shop that here in Boise that we continue to use today. They do the vast majority of our sewing for us. And we went down there, met up with them. They had never sewn a backpack before. They were doing like more tactical holsters and things like that. And but they had the capabilities to do it. They had all the equipment to do it. And then Lenny had literally his wife had this pink brother sewing machine. I got pictures, sewing prototypes, but it was for a long time there for that 10 months. It was a daily, like, let's sew up something. Let's go hike that night. And he had little kids at the time. His first son was born. And so it'd be like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night in the dark. Let's go hike with it. And I was like, repeated that for months and months and months and months, just refining. And we just went after it. And yeah, I think yeah, so sometime in like February, March of 2013, like, all right, let's do this. And then by January 1st, we had the design finished up and we launched the company. Um, and it was cool. I think we had spent like 10 grand in prototyping to that point with the
Okay.
sew shop. We had each had about 5 grand invested in it. and we launched, and I think we sold like 200 packs in the first day. And we were just like, holy crap, we were instantly profitable. We were just like blown away by it. And then it just, for the neck, that was, January of 14. And I think we had told people, they'd ship in March 1st or something like that. And so we used that.
So this
We
is almost like
launched
a
it.
pre-sale type.
Yeah, it was absolutely, it was a
Yeah. Okay.
pre-sale. Like, hey, we'll take your order, we'll ship it to you in March. We basically use the funds from the sale to buy
Yep.
the raw goods to then go and sell it. Some, like, I mean, what's the Kickstarter type thing? It's almost
Yep.
how we modeled it, right? It just wasn't. It was on our own platform. And then yeah, 2014, 15, 16, 17 was just just some of the most stressful years of my life. I learned a lot through Exo, just because we were, from 14 to 15, we grew at 400%. And then from 15 to 16, we grew at like 600%. I mean, our growth was just through the roof. There's no way you could plan for this stuff. We had no idea how to predict it. And so it was just trial by fire, and we made a lot of mistakes. But we always, number one was always took care of the customer. So it didn't matter what it cost us. If we effed up on something, we were going to fix it and make it right. And that's always been the motto. I don't care what it costs, because the long-term success of this will come down to happy customers. And so we just always erred on just make sure the customer's happy and go from there.
You have a really hard time finding a disgruntled Exo customer. That's one of the nice thing about doing all the backpack reviews, is that you end up with a lot of people. And I mean, I'll put them on blast right now. Like, Kuyu is terrible. Like, the amount of people who hit me up and are like, I own this for 3 months and this happened and they told me to get bent. And it was just like, yeah. Anyways, I personally have not had a single person. I've only had positive stories of people dealing with Exo.
Yeah, we have Mark that works for me. You obviously know him, does the podcast.
Yes.
And then Jake's come on. He's been working for us since he was in sophomore in high school, I think. And but they're very much instructed to take care of the freaking customer, and it's tough because sometimes the customer's wrong. Like, it's just like, but that same guy just puts up a stink. He's pissed at you. He gets on Facebook. He makes snipey comments at you, and then. I mean, it's one thing I hated about, I hate disappointing people, right? Like, and then you just feel like crap the rest of the day, and you're not focused on the rest of your job. And Jake and Mark are the same way. We take this stuff personally because we are a small family company, and someone's out there like not happy or bad mouthing us. Like, it's, at the end of the day, we just have a policy of like, let's just take care of the customer and move on to the next thing, right? When it's those situations where like the customer's wrong, but like, let's just take care of it.
I think one of the biggest things people run into now, especially in this post-COVID era, is sourcing. What was it like finding materials in the beginning? And then did that challenge change as you grew to such scale, or did it actually get easier because you had more buying power?
If COVID hit in like 17, it would have been a freaking nightmare, as far as where Exo was in its maturity as a company.
Right.
When it hit in 20, we were healthy. Exo's I run it very, very lean. We can take a lot of, we could drop, I mean, yeah, we're just very lean and efficient.
Yep.
And we were very well positioned right when COVID hit. It was actually somebody from Cryptic Camouflage, they're a local Boise company. They reached out to me asking about a source for some U.S. fabric because they were worried about getting some stuff. And that was like, I mean, I want to say this is like, April 10th, like a couple of weeks after COVID kind of launched. And I all of a sudden was like, oh shit. So I have Pat that does all of our purchasing. I went out there and I said, right now, go buy everything we need for the entire year. Because we have we have excellent data. Like, I can tell you within 10 how many large Ranger Green belts will sell over the course of a month, right? Like, we have very, very good statistical data on, and we even know trends of silly things. Like, we sell a lot more large belts by percentage in August than we do in the rest of the year, because that same guy who's more out of shape is also the guy who's the procrastinator. So we know to scale up large belts. We know to scale large belts right before hunting season. And we know, we just have a lot of great data. So we knew a very good idea of what we're going to sell for the rest of 2020. Went out, purchased all the raw materials. We, again, like a healthy company, we have no debt. We had the cash to go do it. We just went and bought it and sat on it. And then we sailed through that entire year, never back ordered a single item.
So
and
this
then
is,
that Yeah.
That's pretty wild. So there's this interesting case study between Staples and Office Depot, and
Mm.
in 2008, and it's basically, let me get my terminology here. I'm gapping on the actual. Okay, so there's promotion versus prevention mindset. So people tend to be either promotion focused or prevention focused. And this doesn't
Mm.
say anything about your drive or ambition, but it has to do with how you perceive risk. And some people tend to focus more on like the upside and be promotion focused, and other
Mm.
people seem to be more focused on the potential downside and they're prevention focused. And they've actually done studies with soccer teams where you can coach to people's natural tendencies, and people who are naturally promotion focused do better being spoken to in that way. They'll take more risks, they provide better. People who are prevention focused, same thing works for them. Well, this takes place in business as well. So in 2008, businesses that were prevention focused and kind of went on the defense and like spent less capital and took less risk, when you do a longitudinal study, they do far worse, and a large degree of them went out of business. Whereas other people recognize this is a temporary market state. And if I'm lucky enough to be sitting on a bit of a war chest and I can take like some aggressive moves, I'm actually going to outpace my competition. And what you decided to do is a perfect example of that exact
Mm.
same thing. And I'm always really encouraged when I see people do that, because it also speaks, like, people are very largely fear-based. We see this in trading markets all the time. You'll see these like singular occurrences take place that aren't a function of like the rest of the market or the rest of the economy as a whole, and everybody makes these knee-jerk decisions. But I think if you can have an eye to the longer time frame and recognize whatever we're going through, like just because COVID happened, people aren't going to stop backpacking. And in fact, we
Yeah.
found out more people are going to go backpacking because it was the only thing we were
Right.
allowed to do.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So we were very well positioned going into COVID. Like I said, it would have been completely different in 17. It would have been a nightmare. But
Yeah.
yeah, super
What are some of the
fortunate.
challenges that you've run into with Exo?
I mean, early on, it was just scaling with the business. You know, you don't have data, you can't predict sales. What is it going to be? What are you going to sell? So that we've made a point to just have a lot of data points. You know, between, I mean, we track how many phone calls we get per month, how many emails we get per month, and so we can compare that to years past. We track so many different things on our end. Just the more information, the better decisions I can make, the better I can predict the future. Right, like how 80% of my job at this point is just predicting the future and what's going to happen and positioning ourselves well for it. So that getting to those data points took time. And now that we're there, I mean, frankly, 2020, 2021, 2022 is smooth sailing. I mean, we I think our average ship time the last 3 years is something like 16 hours from a place of an order till an item goes out the door, and that's counting like weekends and people buying stuff at 6 o'clock that won't ship the next morning till 8 a.m. So we're just very efficient, very dialed in out there in the warehouse and our purchasing and production and everything. So um, trying to think of, I mean, there's so many headaches from early on of making design mistakes and not testing things thoroughly enough. Things I've learned were, I have been working on our next generation of packs called K4, and it's been a 3-year process to get to this point, and we're thinking about launching it next year. That's certainly the plan. But I've still got some design things to tweak on. Um, but just, yeah, we made some mistakes. When we launched K3, I had switched to this aluminum frame from titanium, and it was lighter and just as strong. And I think I ordered like 100 samples of it. We tested them, didn't have any issues with it. Went to production, launched them, and then we started having them crack on us and break. And it became a freaking nightmare. Like they like by like we launched in, oh, it was like, I think it was right at the end of June, and then like September 1st, somebody called and like my frame broke, and I was like, my heart just stopped. Like, oh
Oh,
God, what happened here? And then the next day, another break. and then another break. And it's just like, oh my God, 2019, I don't ever want to repeat again in my life. Which is, again, all these things I've
And what
learned
was
from the
it? Was it just an
past.
overuse thing, or they just hadn't been?
No, no, no. So it was a combination of, there was just basically micro stress cracks that were forming in the bending process. So they were
Okay.
almost 99% of the time they were breaking in the corners of the frame. So it's the same, K3 frame you've got right now. It's a titanium, just this badass aluminum. The stuff was incredible for,
Yeah.
it was like, I think our frame right now is 6.5 ounces. This was 4.2, but the exact same strength, like yield strength. It was just phenomenal stuff. I was so excited about it, and to save 3 ounces in one part was like, that's a freaking win for me. I'm
Yep.
to trying to build as light as weight pack as I can. There's, I've got a gram scale sitting out here on my desk, and I'm like weighing things out. Like, this is that. Which at the end of the day, there's guys who really care about it, like myself, and the vast majority of guys don't care whether it's
No.
like 4 pounds or 4 pounds 8 ounces. They don't care. But that was a huge, huge, huge lesson learned there of, like, I've got the scale that we had grown to early on. He had a mistake, and it's like, all right, we got to replace 50 of these or 100 of those, whatever. The scale we had grown to, it was just like, holy crap. So we basically just kept seeing them happen. And, when I think it would have been like January or February, I finally decided to pull the plug, because at that point it was like, one out of all the packs out there, there was like one break per 100. But I saw the trend, like, this is not going to get better. This is going to keep getting worse. And so we decided to replace every single frame that we had shipped with titanium. So source the titanium, and yeah, that was God, I think it was about $250,000 in cost that we ate by the time we replaced all those frames. Um,
Wow.
yeah, that one stung. But going back, it was the right thing to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, it was the right thing to do. We took care of our customers, and made it right. And here we are, a few years later, 3 years, 4 years down the road, and we're extremely healthy and plugging along, and have, I think if I was shocked, like, it was such an emotional thing. I'm so attached to this company, right? It's my child. To have those breaks, and when we launched it, when we acknowledged the break and told people we were going to replace them, I was so, especially in this day and age of social media and bad mouthing and stuff like that, I was so worried about what's going to happen to our reputation and this and that. And I was like, we launched it, and then I think I did a post on Facebook. We have a Facebook group, and I'm almost in tears by the support that we had got. Like,
Right.
wow, thank you guys. Like, this is incredible. Thank you so much for doing this. This is way above and beyond. And I was very emotional about it, because I was so just like heartbroken about this. I just didn't want it to happen. So that was a big lesson. And now we're just so overly cautious on everything. I won't make the slightest change to the pack unless I am 100% confident in our sew shop will, they're always looking for ways to get efficient. They'll come to me like, hey, can we sew this different way? And I'm like, nope. Like, not a chance. Like, I don't, what we got's working.
Yeah.
If you find a better way to sew it, let me know. We'll sew some prototypes. We'll beat the crap out of it, and I'll get back to you. And that happens, and sometimes, for the most part, it's very inconsequential things, but I just will not take any chances anymore, because it's just not worth it. Again, going back to
I think that's a really interesting insight, that the gravity of your choices escalates directly correlated
oh
to the size
yeah,
of the company. Like, making a little mistake early on is nothing compared to what it is
yeah,
later
yeah,
on. Yeah.
yeah. So I just have
And
to
you're almost under
operate.
more pressure later on. Like, you
Yes.
almost have more leeway at the beginning to, like, take longer, and nobody really expects anything of you. And then
Yeah.
those expectations change as time progresses as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things now is, I just, back then, say 2014 through 17, I could operate on like 6 weeks. Like, oh, I'll do this, I do that. Now it's like I operate on years, right? Like, if like K4 has been years in development. And it's just how I had to change that way I operate, to just because of the scale, and because mistakes have a much, much larger impact than they did back then.
Okay. Okay, so one of the last questions I want to do on business, because people always approach me about product design, I think because I do so many reviews, like, I'm going to build a new gator. Can you look at it for me? And I'm working on a new backpack. Can you look at it for me? And part of me is like almost wants to give him a sobering conversation. Like, market's pretty saturated. Like, you better make sure you have a pretty strong differentiator here. What is your response in our current climate to people who do feel like they have something? Do you feel like we're saturated? Do you feel like there's still room? And what kind of advice would you give to those future product designers?
I think if you genuinely have to you have to offer something to the person, right? You genuinely have to make a product that is better. And if you have a product that is better and you can take care of the customer, there's always room for that. And businesses cycle, they come and go. Right now, I mean, my biggest, like, as far as Exo is exactly where I want it to be, my biggest fear is, can I keep this running, right? Can I prolong where we're at for 10 years, for 20 years? Like, that's my biggest fear. Can I keep doing that? Because you see businesses come and go all the time,
All the
right?
time.
And some company is super popular that, that just doesn't exist anymore. And it can happen in a span of a few years. So I think there's always room for if you can genuinely make somebody's life better, whether that's a product that has nothing to do with hunting or backpacking or whatever, it doesn't matter. There's always room for that. And there always is going to be room.
Okay. I want to dip over. I got some questions off of Instagram, and then we'll wrap things up. It's funny how many of these we've already covered. Are all the materials used to make Exo packs manufactured in the USA or overseas?
We are not, it's not 100% USA. We are 90% USA materials. I prefer to buy from our US suppliers. We have great relationships with them. I am trying to think right now where there's not much that we get from overseas. Our current YKK zipper comes from overseas, from YKK Taiwan. That is because it's called a RC, racket coil zipper. They do not manufacture that in the United States. We used to use their number 10 AquaGuard zipper. We had a lot of it just has like a 1% failure rate, right? Just over time, it chunks out, the threads get cut on that holds the zipper, the coil to the tape. And it had a failure rate, and I hated it. So I went to YKK, like, what is the best zipper you make? I don't want any failures. This is a pain in the ass. And like, well, it's this racket coil zipper, but we don't make it here in the States. We got to go overseas. Okay, no problem. Like, I have no problem going overseas when it's a better product than I can get here. There's not a single decision we go overseas because of cost. Because it's actually it's a bigger pain in the ass for us, for our size, to buy stuff from there. We do make some very compliant packs where we swap out zippers. I've got a list. It's just some small things, the little metals. No, we got rid of those C clips. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. Sorry. We have a K3B version internally, and K3A. We had a C on the side that came from a company overseas because I couldn't find it in the U.S. All the corduroys in the U.S., all the webbings in the U.S., all the buckles are in the U.S. Frame, our titanium comes from the U.S. The vast majority of it does. We haven't done a good job spelling that out, frankly. There's a lot of rumors, just because we don't say 100% U.S. made, that people speculate that, like, it must be 90% overseas. And that's just not the case for us. Again, it's much easier for me to buy locally than it is to get stuff overseas. We do we supply some packs to some pretty elite special military units that those do have to be very compliant, and we make those and do them, and we don't have to swap much on them. So,
okay. What's your thoughts on Ultra as a fabric?
I played with it a little bit. It's not, from a lifetime warranty perspective, I'm not a fan of it. Right. Yeah, it's not going to hold up as well as 500D. It's not some miracle fabric. It's lightweight. You're going to have tears and issues with it. I've seen some of our competitors are using it. I've seen pictures of tears in the fabric from tripods rubbing through like, you got a spine scope on the inside and a tripod on the outside, and then they go on a backpacking trip and there's a hole in the fabric, right? It's not 500D. for the longest time, when we first started, we were adamant, like, we're not going to use 500D. Everyone uses 500D. There's got to be something better.
Yeah.
The longer I've been doing this, 500D technically is the miracle fabric. Like
Yeah.
it's really good at everything and not great at anything and not poor at anything. It's lightweight. It's incredibly tough. It does a very good job shedding water. It's not bomb proof. It will saturate over time. I did a lot of testing here on the waterproof side for K4 and learned a lot this last year, frankly. The seams are your biggest enemy. Like you could have the most, I built entire packs out of like really heavy duty X pack that's 100% waterproof.
Yep.
They perform the exact same in a shower test as 500D Cordura.
Yes,
to a T.
My
to
test,
a T. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah. Like I am very disillusioned with Ultra. I just finished this super extensive Terminus versus Goshawk review, and I'm like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
You know, you're saving a couple of ounces, and it's like I chucked them under a sprinkler for 45 minutes, and I had a half a cup of water poured out of the bottom of a Goshawk, and I'm like, my Cordura pack doesn't even do this. Like I was just like.
Yeah.
And I was I do think it's one of these like marketing hype things. People want the next new sexy thing. And I think we might get there, but I do not think the fabric is there right now to displace Cordura.
Yeah, I'm in touch with all of our mills, and like I basically have like, here's my perfect wish list fabric, you know, and someday we're getting close to where I can build my own fabric. We're not quite there size wise yet, because it's like right now I'd have to buy like 4 years of fabric where I could truly do like a custom go to directly to Invista, have the yarn made, send it to a mill, have it weaved. We're getting close. I feel like it's a few years away where I can go build up my dream fabric and do it in the US. You can do it overseas right now, but I don't want our main body of fabric to be purchased overseas.
Yeah.
Again, Ultra, it's cool. I would love to. I said this the other day I think it might be one of our podcasts. Personally, I would love to build. I could build like a K3 and save 1.5 pounds off of it and have it perform almost identical. But I'd have to put like a 2-year warranty on it, right? Like that's the reality of the situation. Is I can't, like, I am a lightweight guy and I've built these things to, you know, certainly balance design, performance, and longevity in there. But I feel like the packs are basically as light as I can get them without stripping away. I can't get any lighter without taking away performance or durability. That Ultra Fabrics, this falls right in that camp. Like it's, my prediction is the company's using it. They're just gonna, it's not gonna work out great long term. But I could be wrong. I haven't done a ton of development, prototyping testing with it, just a little bit. I built a K3 pack out of it and was kind of like, I don't see it. So yeah.
Also, as big archery guys, it's noisy as hell compared to Cordura. That was one thing I noticed.
The other thing, we used X Pack in 2014 and probably 15 in the interior of the bag. And all these packs, they have basically, to make them waterproof, they have a really thin layer in between the fibers.
Yep.
And that is waterproof when it's brand new. You poke a needle through it, all of a sudden you've got a big hole there that, unless you go back and put some type of sealant on top of it, you're not going to fill that up. And over time, that laminate will start cracking. And so if you take one of our 2014 packs that had X Pack in there and you put water on the back panel, it'll just saturate right through. If someone's been using it this whole time, it's way worse than 500D. So 500D Cordura uses polyurethane coating it's much more rubbery than you expect. So you poke a needle through it, it kind of seals back up over itself a little bit.
It's not as rigid.
And it's not as rigid. Yeah. So it's, K4 will have 500D. There's some other materials we're using in there as well, but it's, frankly, I hate saying this, but it is the miracle fabric at the moment. Like, it's been around forever, and it's for a damn good reason, because it's good stuff. And it's not because it's cheap. I could care less. We pay between $7 and $10 a yard for Cordura. X Pack's like $15 a yard. It's not that. And there's a K3 uses 2.3 yards of Cordura in it. So you're talking, $10 to $15 more in fabric. Like, that's not a big deal to me. I'd do that in a heartbeat if the value was there for the customer, and it's just not.
Yeah, no, I agree. Okay, I'm going to put a bunch of stuff in the show notes. I will link to Exo, to Hunt Backcountry, to S&S. Anything you wanna share, or I mean, obviously people are on the lookout from K4, but anything else you got coming out, or you want people to keep an eye on?
Yeah, K4. I said the plan right now is next year. We're not. We've got about 100 and I think there's 115 of those out there right now, getting prototyped and beat up all over the world and collecting feedback. And so it's been pretty cool to get that out there and have guys testing it out and beating them up for us. So look for that probably late spring. I think the plans to go to shows with them. Were when we built these in late July, early August, and then I was like, all right, if we have any issues, I'm going to press pause on the whole thing and push it off a whole year. We launched K3 in the middle of the summer, and I will never do that again because it's like peak demand on top of a new product. It was
Yeah,
a nightmare.
not ideal.
So if K4 wasn't going to be ready, I was going to push it off a whole another year. But it's everything performance wise. Feedback's just been absolutely phenomenal. Certainly lots of little suggestions, more personal preference things we've been getting. But I've got a few little. I change the pocket here an inch, and the things that are non-consequential to the durability and performance of the pack. So I'm making those here currently, and the plans to go to shows with them, and then probably launch probably April, late March, early April, something like that is what we're shooting for. So
Awesome.
other than that, we're doing. Speaking of like, I went in December. We're going to do a cool giveaway. We just reached out to all these companies we have great relationships with that are also small independent companies just like we are. And we're going to do a giveaway through Exo on that of these other companies, just to highlight that there are other companies out there that aren't owned by corporations. And because I truly, I love supporting them, and I think it's a better way to do business, and it's just better for everybody. So we're going to do that little giveaway, and
Cool.
Yeah, plug it away.
Awesome, Steve. Well, thank you very much for your time, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on.